All right. Good evening, everyone. Testing. Want to call this meeting to order for the work session. How is everyone tonight? Good?
Good.
Good. For those who don't know, Councilmember Lowers is calling in on WhatsApp, so we are going to try to make sure she can hear and also partake in the conversation. So if we're muttering with cell phone, that's what I am trying to do at the same time. So announcements and communications. I would just start off by saying that this past, I think it was on Friday or Thursday, we lost a member of our community, Jackie Biggers. For those who knew her, warm place in our heart for her, but just anytime we lose someone in our little community, it hurts. And that's all my announcements right now. Anyone else?
I think it's worth noting that Jackie Biggers was named an honorary member of Pine Lake by Kathy Ginobrega, former mayor. And so I just think that's really, really lovely that she loved this place before she even moved here. And honorary resident.
Thank you. Any other announcements, communications?
I hate to follow that, but the pollination celebration is slated to happen Sunday, May 3rd, from 12 to 4 p.m. I believe Tacos and Giggles food truck will be there, and there'll be a plant sale and craft vendors and music. So it should be a good time. I hope everybody can come out.
And that'll be down at the beach house area?
Yes, at the beach house.
Thank you. Any other announcements or communications? Great. Do we have an adoption of the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi. All right. And do we have an adoption of the minutes? No minutes. Okay, so we're moving on from that. And this is the first opportunity for any public comment. Please come on up to the podium. Make sure the microphone is close to where you are speaking from, and say your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. So come on up. And it does not appear that we have anyone who would like to offer public comment, so you will have another opportunity after the new business is completed. So moving on to new business, the first order is finance update. City manager.
Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
going to make just a brief introduction of Stephen Mayer, who is still new. He started in earnest after transitioning from another person, Paul Salvatore, with the Sumter Consulting Group. We entered that contract, I think, in September of last year. So he was just getting his feet wet. I think at the meeting that we were going to introduce him to you, we also had our audit presentation, and what he had done a couple of weeks prior was to take a look at the comments from the auditor, and without any real background of Pine Lake, but based on its experience, was able to put together a management response, pretty detailed responses on the various findings. So there's a lot that he's still trying to get through, recognizing that our systems are very underdeveloped. We've never had a finance department prior to last year, when the city hired a different contractor that unfortunately did not produce the kind of dividends that I think any of us expected. We ended up terminating that contract early. So Stephen at this presentation doesn't have a lot of numbers per the request that had come from an email communication from Council Member Lowers. So I will be taking on most of that responsibility, as I've already presented in part to those requests in the strategic performance report. Obviously, we have a lot of items listed on the agenda today, which is a bit different than the past when the former mayor tried to keep the agenda limited to 2 or 3 items. So I say that only to say that with Stephen's presentation, which I imagine will be relatively short, along with the other discussion that you have, I hope you will save time for what I consider to be very substantive discussion that is needed as presented in the strategic performance report, a continuation of the discussion that we started last month. So with that, let me introduce Stephen Mayor, again, his second time.
Welcome.
Is that a weird noise, or is that just me? That might just be me. Well, thank you, Stanley. Couldn't have said it better myself. Pretty much spot on. We were hoping for, or I was hoping for, some more numbers. Hopefully, our first, budget to actual schedule for the first quarter of 2026. Unfortunately, we're just not there yet. We'll get into some of that. So my strategic performance report is more of a focus on a little bit of what a budget to actual schedule is, some of what finance's goals are around that reporting, some kind of where we stand, some of the issues that we're encountering, or some of the challenges rather, and how we're approaching those challenges. And I even finished with a tentative, which is an important word there, a tentative timeline as to when you can expect some of these things that a city should be seeing, essentially. I don't think, unfortunately, we're sort of underperforming, or sort of, not underperforming, that's not the right word, but like we're underdeveloped in our financial systems. And given the fact that we're a little bit behind as well from like our accounting and our bank reconciliations, and we think that the appropriate steps is to kind of handle that first, and then get into 2026. You kind of want to go sequentially. Like it's posed a real challenge. Obviously, I'm one person, and the way the contract is written, we're 6 to 8 days per month, so being on a part-time basis, having the type of work that we have, so you've got catching up on 2025 as well as all your daily operations in 2026. We need to be present for that as well. So our approach to that, one of our the way we're addressing that issue is that Sumter's actually we're gonna designate another person, and we're gonna divide that work to where someone can focus on what's going on in 2026 and be there for the daily operations that are needed, and someone can be fully dedicated to actually catching us up. I think that's gonna be a much more effective way, a much more timely way to get where we wanna be. And so that was kind of the whole summary. I don't know, I feel like I took out a lot of that stuff. I did want to talk about what a budget to actual schedule is. I wanted to start with some education. I apologize for those of you that know what it is. I know it may seem kind of silly to go through this, but maybe someone doesn't know, and maybe, especially in the public, maybe they've never seen one before. The city's never had one. So it's a report that calculates the current difference between estimated revenues and actual collections, and estimated expenditures and actual cost, and it's typically prepared by municipalities on a monthly basis. And so what's the purpose of the schedule? It's a tool that assesses the performance of a government. It helps control spending and provides financial insight to decision makers, which allows for adjustments to be made when needed. And example of those adjustments would be budget amendments or cancellation of programs, just depending on what it is that we find. Common mistakes or common ways to read the report incorrectly. The most common, rather, is that the expenditures and revenues should be spent and collected evenly throughout the year. So we get through 3 months, you would expect your expenditures and revenues to match exactly with those 3 months. Well, I think you guys know that's not how this works. It takes closer analysis. It takes a better understanding of how city revenue works, you know, and what's specific to Pine Lake. You know, property taxes are collected at year end, so you would expect not much of anything going on in the first half of the year, and that's just kind of your most obvious example. I think your expenditures get a little bit more complicated as well, and so it's just, when those reports come out, just know that, you know, it'll be provided to all our stakeholders, and that's, you know, that's city council, that's city manager, that's department heads, that's the public as well. That it's not as simple as, oh, revenues, and why are we so behind on these revenues? There's got to be some sort of analysis that goes with it. And so we'll have updates. I think that's the plan. Finance will present these or provide them and then give updates when needed. So it won't be monthly. I think that's a little excessive. But it could be monthly if there's things to talk about. So maybe it'll be, instead of coming up here every month, maybe it'll just be some written narrative or something like that. But definitely, I think on a quarterly basis at least, there's plenty to talk about when we're like, how is our performance going? You know, especially as you work towards your millage rate process, which comes in June for Pine Lake. So I kind of already talked about the plan. The original plan was to have the budget to actual start at this meeting. Unfortunately, we're just not there. I've talked about I guess why we're not there. I mean, we've got a lot going on, and we have essentially underdeveloped financial systems, and so our approach to that is we're going to bring on some additional help, and I think that's going to speed things up. I do want to note that I am paying attention to all the financial concerns that's being mentioned, more specifically the continuous budget deficits, long-term financial stability, the city's current liquidity or ability to pay its obligations, the high millage rate / property taxes, and a tax base that lacks diversity and size. So I hear you, I see it, I agree. And as we continue to learn the city, and the goal is for finance to be a bigger part of these conversations when we can be. And I know that y'all need the financial information that you're asking for. I think what you're requesting makes a lot of sense. And of course, I'm regretful that it's not ready for you so that you can use it. But just know that's what we're working towards. You should have this information on a regular basis at some point so that you can make these tough decisions, not in the dark, but with some actual factual information. And then I created a tentative timeline. Again, tentative, but at the next work session, so a month from now, I'm hoping to have that budget to actual schedule. Keep in mind the 6 to 8 days. We may be kind of breaking that when we bring someone else in, but we are limited. So you may hear a month, but a month for me is a week and a half. Like it's just, well, I think it's a week and a half to 2 weeks, right? Is that right? It's almost half the time. So it's 1.5 to 2 days per week. So it's just much less than a month. Either way, I think we should throw the goal on there and we should aim for it, especially with some additional help. And, you know, it's typically you want to wait to do these reports when you can truly close a month, because closing a month gives you a lot more confidence in its accuracy and its completeness. And you don't properly close a month without a bank reconciliation. And you don't do a bank reconciliation from 1 month when the prior month hasn't been completed. And so we're in this conundrum, this issue where it's like, how do you do that? Well, we could produce these reports and we could start giving them to you, and we may do that if we feel comfortable enough to do so, but we may have a little asterisk and be like, hey, bank reconciliations aren't reconciled, possibility for error. But we won't present it to you if we don't feel confident. I don't want you to say we're giving you numbers that you can't rely on, but that may be a way that we can reach this May goal without being fully caught up on everything that we need to be caught up on. In the month of June, I'm aiming for unaudited financials for all funds. Not much to say there other than that's a lofty goal, but one that I think could be achieved if, again, I'm able to focus completely on catching us up on 2025. With that might be some budget amendments related to 2025. Again, that's only if needed. So we'll take a look and see where our final numbers end up. We'll look at where our current budget is, and we'll make a decision about whether we need to change some of those appropriations. Usually you do. I mean, it's not uncommon, so I would expect them. And in the future, it won't take so long. We won't be finishing our year in June or July or August. You'll be done within the few months prior. And my preference, I don't know what Stanley's preference is, but I like amendments before the year end is up, before you've even spent the money. So at some point, I think that would be the goal. But this is very common to have budget amendments after a year end. I don't want to cause any confusion there. And then millage rate hearings and city council voting on the 2026 millage rate. Yes, that's another reason why I wanted the report in May, because I know that in June you guys are going to be voting on a millage rate, and you probably want to see some numbers. So, well, at least a preliminary digest numbers, but you might want to see like where do we stand with the budget. And then in the August-September timeframe, hopefully completion of the 2025 audit. We are eligible for an extension, which just means we can extend the due date to December 31st, which allows us to remain eligible for any state grants that we decide to apply for. And so we're going to take full advantage of that because we should. And hopefully by the following year, we'll be able to do our audits on time. That's definitely the goal. And then fiscal year 2027 budget preparations will begin in that time frame as well. And that's where we stand. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Just one quick question. What is the estimated cost of having a second person brought on?
Nothing.
What an answer. Thank you.
I was ready for that one.
Other questions, comments?
I'd just like to say thank you. This is obviously a really important part of running a city, and taking your time to be a professional and get it right, that's obviously really important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
I just would say, Stephen, you and I had a chance to meet, and I just want to thank you for taking that time, and that I just really enjoyed our conversation, getting to know you and understanding how important you feel your job is. You take it very seriously, is my impression, and I appreciate that, and I think the city appreciates that. I think it's important when you say that everyone understands, when you say underdeveloped, that means we're basically, and Stanley, if you could help me, if I'm saying this correctly, really building out our finance department and our record keeping. Is that a correct way to say that?
Perfect.
So what that really means is a lot of that hasn't been done in the past, or to the degree that we really need to, and that's why, if I understand correctly, Stephen, this is taking a little bit extra time to really make sure we have all those numbers correctly.
Yeah, and one of the things we haven't mentioned, because it's rather technical, in the past, as I understand it, your administration did the accounting work, I think, through something like QuickBooks, which is very basic for any type of business. But before the former city manager left, the city had approved what is called an enterprise resource plan, a much more sophisticated system, starting with finance. It can impact other areas of the city as well, but they are usually very complex, particularly in implementing. They come with modules, for instance, for the different functions of finance. And it really takes someone, ideally, to know the old system, or at least have been acquainted with the old system, to make that transition to the new system. So that's just more area that the new team of Stephen, at this point being the team, more difficult, recognizing that everyday activities have to happen. And I started out in my comments by saying that where he landed the first couple of weeks in December, where he was just being introduced to the organization was for the 2024 audit, which was way behind schedule, but we needed to get that caught up. So there's a lot of backup that has to happen. He mentioned past bank reconciliations, bringing those up to date. Obviously, we got the 2025 audit. We've got a new budget on the horizon. We've got the current budget that's facing challenges, and with the council asking for information to help in decision making, all fair, and all will come together in a matter of time. But having a part-time status, we absolutely need a full-time finance department. I sought to do that back in the summer, and we were just short. We didn't know what the class and pay study was going to say at the time. We found someone that wasn't Stephen's firm. That was the second option, more affordable, $60,000 flat cost as opposed to the previous $75 an hour. That ended up being in the six figures for less than a year. It's pretty close to that number. We found someone that was willing to take a significant pay cut, and I've given this example a couple of times, because for $90,000, we could have had a full-time person. The highest department director at the time, before we had the study, was making $75,000. That was the public works director. Police chief was much lower. Those three positions are pretty much the equivalent in most any local government organization that you go. When the class and pay study results came back, the minimum of the pay range for that particular grade was $90,000. So I say that in my mind, that's further evidence that we got the right product for our market, but not in time to make the case of an additional $30,000 to get a person here. In the meantime, I think Stephen is superior in his craft, but the limited availability only takes away from our catching up.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Just to continue on that, isn't there some expression of like you're sailing the boat while you build it or something, is what it kind of felt like to me when I was reading
That's
the
on
report.
the next SPR. We're gonna have a boat. It's like halfway down.
Building the sides up higher.
Yeah.
But anyways, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And, you know, for me, I think it's better to sort of have a slower start and really line up and create all the procedures well, as opposed to rushing through. And then in the future, you're just constantly correcting sloppy work. So I just really appreciate you being attuned to that, and just, you know, all of us having to recognize that it takes time. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Well, thank y'all for being so understanding. You're so smart.
Councilmember Lowers, do you have anything to add?
Just to prove that I'm not asleep, yeah, just like to echo, really appreciate the diligent work and look forward to those reports when they manifest. But thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Item number 2, permit for out-of-season swimming on the Lake Beach.
I believe this was brought up by Councilmember Torrent.
Yes. So right now, as we know, the swimming season has ended by Lakefest, and Lakefest has requested that we open up the beach for swimming. And I don't know of a reason why not, but that's what we're here to discuss. Chief, I would be most interested in your thoughts. Yes, please.
I know that the way we do business now is through resolution. I do recommend, rather than trying to enforce folks out of the water, since they're going to be right there on the beach, that we just suspend for that weekend, opposed to put something actually into order that we would have to revisit every year. So I don't have a problem, and I think it makes sense. We don't get a lot of traffic in and out, but we do get some. And we want to be consistent. When we say no, we want it to be no. And when we say yes, we want it to be yes. So I do recommend suspending it for that weekend to allow for the spillover that we will have inside of the lake.
Chris, your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I wasn't clearing my throat to get your attention, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, but yes, thank you. I have a number of concerns from a liability perspective. We ordinarily, as I understand it, provide lifeguards during the summer swimming season.
Not lifeguards, no.
Okay.
We have monitors, and it's very clearly swim at your own risk.
The distinction legally between having monitors and lifeguards is infinitesimal. I mean, they're virtually going to be treated legally as the same. But even with the swim at your own risk signage, if we could, there's not a provision in this discussion for how we pay for additional staffing or monitors or whatever you want to call them at the lake on times outside of the normal swimming season. There's not a clear delineation of what the role of the police department, because they're really our only public safety arm, what their role is for malefactors on these extra weekends or extra periods of open swimming. Are we going to be arresting people who are acting out or not complying with orders of the police? Are we going to be, what are going to be the limits of any rules of engagement with these situations for the police department to follow? I know this is a little bit, stepping on Chief's toes about how she runs her department, but the policy body needs to be able to establish what those 30,000 foot rules are, so that the police officers who are on the line aren't acting outside of the scope of what you intend your rule enforcement to be. So creating exceptions to a codified rule create all kinds of questions and legal issues. You would require an amendment to the current policy, a formal amendment to that policy. I believe it's probably in your ordinance. So it would take 2 reads to get it passed to change the current open season. There's a number of hoops to this process that aren't delineated, and I can't brainstorm here on the fly, because this agenda item was asked to be added, but there was no background provided about what your concerns are, what your desires were, or anything else. It's just, I want to talk about this. Okay, fine, but I don't know what I got to be prepared for to provide legal advice in response to this. So it's a little challenging from my chair to offer advice and counsel about how you ought to proceed or might consider proceeding to get to whatever your goal is, because I don't really have a clear understanding about what the goal is for whatever this extra swim time might be. So with those sort of shotgun style concerns, I'll yield the floor back to the chair.
I think the goal is to allow people to swim during Lake Fest. If Lake Fest supplied monitors so that there's no cost to the city, would that alleviate your concern?
Not entirely. I mean, we're in the process of trying to renegotiate the plain MOU as we speak, and as I recall from last year, Lake Fest is a plain, or am I
No,
missing it?
Lake Fest is separate.
Is separate, okay. Well, we don't have an MOU with Lake Fest independently of the one we have with Plain, so we don't have any agreements about whose responsibility and liabilities are for running Lake Fest. There's not a, there's a pattern of past behaviors, but there's not a contract that we have passed that I'm aware of that we've done.
Lake Fest, they do one every year.
Okay, well, forgive me for not remembering, but
I apologize, but we will have a draft coming to you shortly. But you haven't seen it so far this year.
And I'm just going to throw out that I apologize. This is the first agenda that I was part of putting together, and so not really understanding when we added something that we needed some information to be included in the packet. So that I will own that, and I've taken an opportunity for the future.
Well, I mean, my comment sounded more critical than it was intended, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, but the point is, if there are questions you're going to expect me to answer, I need to know what the questions are.
Absolutely.
Right? And I'm sitting here flat-footed, frankly, trying to figure out what it is you need to hear from me.
Exactly. So I appreciate that opportunity to learn. Mr. Kendrick, you had something to add? Welcome.
Let's not forget we have to do E. coli
E.
testing.
coli testing.
That's one of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Kendrick, the cost for that is about 100, is that right? 150?
The concern would be if the level rises above 200 milligrams per liter, that would prohibit anybody from swimming to begin with.
So if that was tested beforehand?
It's tested during the swim season, it's tested weekly.
Mhm.
And we post those results. And if it exceeds the 200 level, we, suspend swimming. So this will be more than almost a month after the end of swim season. So the question would be, do we continue testing up until then? Or do
Yeah.
we suspend testing and then test maybe the week before and, where it'll be prior to, back into the same routine?
So the potential cost is it's not just a test, it's multiple
Depends on-
tests.
But yeah, it could be if you, continually test, it could be up to 4 tests prior to that. But if you suspend it until the week prior, it'll be only 1 test.
Thank you. Good information. Councilmember Lowers, do you have anything to add or questions?
I really appreciate knowing about the cost of testing. I will say on my mind, just maybe not this year, but going forward, I think out of appreciation for global warming, the odds that people would like to swim in the lake continuously up until Lake Fest it's probably just going to grow. So in the future, I'd like us to talk about expanding swim season all the way through Lake Fest. For this year, and especially with costs in mind, I'd favor finding a way to just open it for that weekend.
Thank you. Are you able to hear okay?
Yeah, doing okay so far.
Yay. Any other questions, comments?
I have some questions for Chief, please. What in past years with Lake Fest, if any, like as far as when when people haven't been allowed to swim, how much of an issue has it been? Like how many confrontations are there? Are people been, like hostile? Like what has the situation been?
Well, in the past, Lake Fest is toward the end of October, so it's not ridiculously, hot or cold. So we don't, I just can't recall off the top of my head just having issues with people in the lake. You have a lot of people wading in the water and, getting their feet, or if they play in the sand, they're rinsing their feet in the water. But we don't have a lot of people just in the water. And I think, I'm not sure whether or not we still keep our signs up that say no swimming. They probably removed because they don't match the decor. But yeah, we don't usually have problems.
Okay. And the wading issue, is that a problem as far as people getting in ankle deep, knee deep?
Actually, it depends on the season, because in the summer, it's a huge problem because it starts off with wading, and then next thing you know, everybody's,
Yeah.
full on.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
There's
can
another
you add that
public
during
comment.
public comment? Welcome to do that during public comment. Thank you, Eva. No, we're just discussing, so thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Moving on to item number 3, amending Chapter 16, Section 36C6, allowing open fire under permit. And Councilmember Torrance, I believe you brought that one up as well.
This was another request from a community member about having fires on the beach. In the past, we've had luau's, they've been community events, police has been there. And currently, our ordinance says that you can't do that. And so I would ask the chief and our city attorney to weigh in on the challenges of changing that, and if that's something that we can do.
Well, right now, because of El Nino, you're facing a outdoor fire ban that's statewide. The governor has on his desk a directive of issuing a executive order declaring a statewide drought and a state of emergency related to that drought. So your chances of having fire outdoors through the summer and into the fall are probably pretty slim under the current weather situations, because this is the earliest that I'm aware of, based on my research, that the outdoor fire ban has been implemented, or that there is a drought being declared by the state. We've not had rain in Georgia for 3 weeks. There is no rain in the forecast for the next 10 days. Long-range forecast for Georgia says there's very little chance of rain going into the whole month of May. So you're unlikely to have this even be an option for most of this year. If you wanted to make a change to allow this under some circumstance, again, you're going to have to define what those circumstances are, whether the criteria for getting a permit, what's the cost of obtaining the permit, who do they file with, who they obtain it from, what are the basis for revoking the permit if things are out of hand at the beach, how many permits do you grant on any particular day, week, month, whatever, what are the limits or extent of enforcement authority for the police department. All of that is part of what needs to go into the analysis of whether this can happen. The reason the ordinance was originally written to not allow fires is because there is, from my own observations, there's often a lot of debris at the beach. There's lots of flammable debris. There's trees that overhang the beach house and other parts of the lake area that drop needles and leaves and other things in the area, which all are clearly combustible and clearly have the ability to fly around and light other things on fire, like the wetlands. So the risks, in my original recommendation from last July on the nuisance ordinance and the control of your park spaces, dealt with those issues by saying fires are just not a good idea in that space. Plus, it's a very limited space, and you start having crowded people with fires, then there's a possibility of people horseplaying, falling into fires, getting badly burned, all those kinds of things. And again, everybody's going to be looking for the deepest pocket in the room, and that's always going to be us. So regardless of whatever we say about this is at your own risk, this is, whatever, we're still going to be looked at as a target defendant for any of these events that might happen under these circumstances. So from a risk management standpoint, I cannot in good conscience recommend a change in the policy. Y'all are, of course, as I have said repeatedly to this group and to your predecessors, free to ignore me at your will. But please understand that if you do that, then you're gonna have a memo in the file from me that's gonna say essentially what I've just said now.
Thank you. I'm in agreement.
So just to clarify, and Chief, I think the paperwork in the packet comes from you. That's got the highlighted number 6 on page 7 of 35. Open fire, smokers or grills, it shall be unlawful to ignite, light, or utilize any open fire, smoker, or grill except in permanent installations provided at the park or trail for such purpose. So if I understand correctly, then that if someone were to come down and bring a grill, that's not acceptable. That doesn't qualify because it's not a permanent installation.
Yeah, that's the way your ordinance is written, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I think most of mine have been answered. I had a bunch of notes about this, but I think y'all have covered it, so thank you. The only thing I just want to mention, just for kicks, is I feel like fire pits are often like a nighttime. The appeal is to use them at night. And given that the beach is closed at night, I'm just curious, like, how much daytime usage we would even have, right? And on the one hand, I guess you could argue if it's there, somebody will use it. But yeah, I have a lot of concerns about like fire safety and just the average person not being super mindful. And then also just environmental concerns about, you know, people often bring accelerant. Like in my house, we have fire pits outside, and we use we're like one match people, and we use like kindling and all that stuff. But, you know, accelerant on the beach and near the lake and all that sort of thing. I feel like there are some environmental concerns as well.
Chief, do we have signage that indicates that that is the ordinance?
Yes, we do have signage. We just have, which is the beach rules. I don't think we need a whole lot more. I just think that we need to make sure that whatever language is transferred onto the website, because a lot of people that come to the lake to visit refer back to the lake and whatever the instructions are. So just making sure that those things are in sync.
Thanks.
I guess I would just also like to mention cleanup. That to me seems like that would be a problem. Fires don't cool down immediately, and when people are done hanging out by the fire, they want to go, and that leaves it for somebody else to pick up. And I'm not in agreement with somebody else picking up after someone's mess.
And that's one of the main reasons why years ago we did change the ordinance, because people would have their grills and then they would just dump it right at curbside. And our public works was stuck, especially on the weekend, Monday morning, clearing up all of that. And then we have people that will bring it from there to the beach, and now we have contamination of food and all kind of other rubbish mixed in with the sand, so.
Councilmember Lowers, do you have any questions or comments?
I agree with all of the above. No fires, please.
All right.
Thanks
you all.
everyone for the discussion. I think we will just be letting this one go.
Great. And moving on to item number 4, vegetation management, Pine Lake Dam downstream. And whose is that? Torrance?
Yes, I brought it up because I thought we should be discussing what setting community standards and making sure that herbicides are not used on the riprap, near the riprap, near a creek. And I don't know if we need to make an official city resolution that bans herbicide use. I don't know how much we use now, or if that's even our. So.
Prior discussions and ongoing discussions with city manager, and knowing the mood of the community, we're going, and plus because some of the organizations that the city is in the process of joining, such as like the Bee City, we are adopting the IPM strategy, Integrated Pest Management, which does not utilize herbicides, pesticides. So, and I think this is correct, you can't, per the state of Georgia statutes, you cannot ban pesticides, but the policy or the culture, the right word to say is that we won't be advocating for the use of that, because we'll be adopting the IPM strategy, which does not, subscribe to pesticides or herbicides. So I don't think it's any, danger of those things even. And by the way, we don't use any of that now. We don't purchase any of that. There's none in our shed or anything like that. We've been also researching alternate methods If you see somebody spraying something in the near future, probably like tomorrow, it is vinegar and salt, and those kill most weeds.
Yes. So, Mr. Kendrick, if, so one, IPM, great, thank you for that. That requires some education and certification, I believe.
Yeah, I have a IPM certification, but I need to renew it, so I'm in the process of going through that now. I got to take the applicator's exam because my license was in South Carolina, so I've got to take the Georgia exam. So I've ordered all the books and I'm doing all the studying now. So I got to go to, I got to find a technical college to go sit for the exam. So.
Well, I appreciate that you're taking the extra time to do that, and thank you. I know that's not an easy class to sort of get.
It's one of the requirements of becoming a B city, and those types of things. So I'm probably the most likely candidate to take that task on. So
Thank you for doing so.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think we're moving
I
quickly
think-
and professionally.
I just want to really make sure explicitly, my thinking coming into this is that a specific policy, even if it were legal to ban herbicides, which it sounds like it's not, I don't, is a specific policy actually necessary if we have an agreement with Public Works that this is not how they're going to, manage the land? So my thinking is just that, is it necessary to create a policy in like a legal sense, like a resolution or an ordinance, if this is our agreed upon management? So.
Is that a rhetorical question or a legal one?
Just confirming that, is it, yeah, sorry, I'm not being very clear. But I mean, is it actually necessary to
It's not,
institute? Okay.
Councilmember Kohler. If there were a change in administrations or change in staff, there might be a reason to revisit the council's thoughts on this topic. But if the representation of the administration is that they already have an internal operating procedure, that's the rule in Pine Lake, then there's nothing else that the council really needs to do. You've made your will known and they've complied with your directive.
Okay, thank you.
So the only thing I would be curious about is thinking about, again, one, thank you for pursuing that. Is branding our city as one that follows IPM practices, which allows us to qualify for B City, potentially Bird City, not Bird City, it's Birds through Board. Well, Tree City doesn't have that, but there's another certification we could do that's through Birds Georgia, which used to be National Wildlife Foundation.
Okay.
But that could be, again, another way that we continue branding ourselves as that environmentally friendly city, by stating that that's our Public Works policy of practicing IPM methodology. Any other comments, Councilmember Lowers? Or anyone?
None here.
Great. Again, since those last three items were all brought forth, and I wrote myself a note, I need to remember and be prepared to know who actually brought this forth to the agenda. So, again, part of my learning here. Item 5 is the Rockbridge Road mural project. And
This is Councilmember Torn again.
People have been asking for things. I think we should do it. We've been talking about it for years now. I think it could really bring this community together. I think MAP is a really good city functionary. They're a group that is designated by the city, and I think as the municipal arts project, municipal arts panel, thank you. I think they'd be a good spearhead for it. I think that we have some money for it now. Is that?
can you share, City Manager?
This is actually an item that we'll be bringing to you at your action meeting, and the sequence of activities, I guess. Yeah. The sequence of activities, Mayor Hall, before she resigns, so literally this has been in the last few weeks, had reached out directly to the county for apparently some funds that had been verbally agreed with the prior council or mayor. And upon Mayor Hall reaching out, to our surprise, by the next day, the county had issued a check for, I think, $20,000. So my not having all of the history at the time, nor Stephen Mayer, who was monitoring the funds coming in and made us aware that it had came in, we thought that it was just going to be for the good of our general fund.
You were hoping.
Since then, we learned from another former mayor, Mayor Hammett, that in the verbal agreement, there were some specifics of how the funds were supposed to be used, tied to the mural project on Rockbridge Road. So I've been working with her, Stephen and I, to know what those requirements are, so to speak. So we will be bringing to the council for you to accept these monies kind of after the fact as a grant, with the conditions as we understand it. And I think it's primarily for the purpose that Councilmember Torrent has raised. Of course, the council will have to determine how it wants to proceed in making it happen, but that will be for your discussion either during the acceptance or following the acceptance of the grant if you choose to.
Great, thank you, and just want to publicly thank Melanie Hammett and Brandy Hall for making that happen. It's magic that it's appeared. Questions, comments?
As a member of MAP, I can go ahead and comment on a couple things. Just to put them out there, I'm not representative of the group. I'm not trying to sort of project anything, but just bring up a few things that I've had in some of my conversations with Mayor Hammond as well. Is I think it would be really great, at least to consider this as a very community-driven group project as opposed to hiring a muralist. So in the sense of like hiring a muralist who engages the community, kind of gets other people painting, I think that would be just a really great experience for the community in this like unifying community building sort of way. And the other thing is to really have the business district involved as well, because it's going to be their space, and in some cases right across from their businesses. So to really make it a group project in all the ways that we can.
Has Matt been meeting?
No, I mean, Matt kind of has like a little core group that does pollination celebration, and I'm just sort of this tangential
Okay, because
on the outskirts of things.
I'm a member, and if there were meetings, I would have been.
We haven't been excluding you, or they've been excluding both of us.
Well, regardless, it's wonderful that money has appeared, and I totally agree. Hiring someone to paint it, no. Hiring someone who could help us paint it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think it's a great opportunity. Any other comments, Chief?
Yes, I just wanted to add, echo what Stephanie said. You know, there's been a lot of hard work on securing this project, and just a lot of networking. And I would just hope that we consider the spirit in which these funds were obtained and solicited, and that the people that we don't forget in our inclusion, you know, like Kohler said, individuals that have already been on the ground floor. You know, I don't want to see this be a project that's taken over by any particular group. there's already some people that have begun like the groundwork of that are in the business district, that are on the different members in the community, and just bring it together as a whole. So I don't know why I'm volunteering myself to be a part of this, but I guess I just did.
And we appreciate that. And again, just a reminder, I think sometimes it's easily forgotten that the businesses up on Rockbridge Road are Pine Lake. And I think sometimes they get forgotten. Any other comments, Councilmember Lowers, as well? Are you still there?
Do I need to affirm every time? I will.
I'm just gonna ask to see if you're still there, to see if you're not napping, because it's what time where you are?
It is 2 in the morning here.
So we just appreciate your taking a nap earlier in the day to be here tonight.
Wouldn't miss it.
All right. City Manager Hawthorne, item 6.
Yes, I think I've got the next 3 items, and for this one, at least to kick off the discussion, and I want to kick it off. This is the city manager recruitment process, potentially interim city manager being brought on. So let me kick it off with, even though you've got some proposals that Mayor Hall had sought before she resigned, my understanding tonight is more of a conceptual discussion in how the council may want to proceed. Historically, with the first time opening of the city manager position for Pine Lake, given the new form of government, and for the first city manager, she was already here, but within a few months of the new charter being adopted, she transitioned out. And so it presented an opportunity and a challenge for the council and how to go about the process. And it was the subject of the fall retreat of 2024. And it was one of the council's priorities, and I can only assume that in respect to what the new charter actually describes as the relationship between the city manager and city council and the mayor, and as the charter reads currently, the city manager does report to the mayor, and is responsible to the city council. But out of that retreat, as was recorded in the retreat report, the council reached consensus that the mayor and the interim city manager had been selected at the time, that they would take the lead on the recruitment process, not only for the city manager, but also the city clerk position that was also vacant at the time. So this was, I believe the retreat was held in late September. It might have even been in October. And so they went about a process that turned out to be pretty efficient, and I was the ultimate person selected. It was not a process that was inclusive of the council until after the mayor had made a recommendation to the council, who subsequently ratified the position. So to take that historical perspective, in making some comments, because obviously this is my field and I've gone through countless recruitment processes as a candidate. This is a big deal, and it is for a formal process that cities go through, even large cities, when they have full human resource departments, with a bunch of employees. Usually, cities will opt to go with a contracted firm, particularly if you want a comprehensive process. There is a lot involved, starting with all of the materials that then the council would need to agree on as far as advertising what you're looking for, your goals and objectives. That's what a recruiting firm is going to come in and literally want to talk to each of you, and then the formal meetings that will be held to make decisions, and that's before you get into the process period, and then all of the coordination that needs to take place with candidates, narrowing down the list of people who have applied, and if they meet the criteria, then needing to bring that to the council, introducing processes for introducing the candidates to not only the council but to the community. I know that there was some feedback in some of the email series. It was something that was talked about at the new council members orientation, where you all learned some of that. So it is a noble process, but it comes with a lot that goes with the process and a cost that goes with it. I will tell you that the $18,000 that Sumter, and Sumter Consulting happens to be the company that we use to recruit a finance director, Stephen, and before Stephen, Paul Salvatore. But this firm is actually just coincidentally the firm that recruited me from Connecticut to the city manager position in College Park, Georgia. The proposal for the recruitment, I'll make a few comments on the interim proposal, is very aggressive. I was talking about the cost of $18,000. I will tell you that the floor that I'm used to is probably around $25,000 and can go as high as probably double that, depending on the firm. So I can tell you that $18,000 is probably the most competitive number that you're going to find, and I'm not trying to pitch up the firm because I don't think you're even at that stage of wanting to necessarily talk about the specific proposal this evening. The time factor, the proposal from Sumter says 56 days, which is about 2 months. I will tell you that is very aggressive. It doesn't necessarily take into account the schedules of the candidates, all of the work that has to happen prior to then, the coordination with council for the various stages of the processes. Typically, a process for a recruitment of city manager is going to be at least 6 months. And it often expands to something closer than a year. I will give you an example. This particular firm that has been basically based in Georgia, Warren, the president of Sumter, has kind of expanded into the state of Florida, my home state. And so as opportunities come open, I kind of follow to see, when the position might open. He was recently awarded a recruitment in South Florida. And for 3 months now, he's been sending out his advertisements up saying that more information to come. And so it kind of got to be controversial. The legislative body didn't like the recruitment brochure, and then those kind of things have to be taken kind of on the schedule of meetings or scheduling special meetings. So there are just little things that can go awry that could stretch out the process. Even though I know that there was some criticism of the way that it was done before, the council not being involved until the ratification, is actually provided for in the charter, because the position actually reports to the mayor. which the advantage of that is it created an opportunity for an efficient process. I probably would not have ever become your city manager except for the efficiency of the process. Another consideration is at the time there was not a salary range. You do have a salary range now. The quality of candidates that you will attract, don't be disappointed if you don't get some big pool of, and it's going to be this big competitive process. As I understand the process previously, and I think Ned had some role, assisting as applications came in, and this is my interpretation, and he can certainly speak on it because he's made comments to me. For the period that the position was open, and I consider myself to be a top candidate, and I think I earned the right for this position, but I don't think I had, a whole lot of competition either. They had gone through and screened, and then when mine came through, I think at least the interim then said to the mayor, you've got somebody with a lot of experience up here, and it was literally a couple of interviews. I interviewed with the interim city manager, and then the mayor later that afternoon, I believe it was, interviewed me and invited me a few days later to come up for a more formal interview and tour. And then, lo and behold, a recommendation was made, and except for the efficiency of the process, a good opportunity that came along before another one came along. I did pull out of another city after I had interviewed with the mayor and the interim city manager. So there was something to be said about the efficiency of the process and the way that your charter is constructed. So there may be a win-win that you could get from that. Obviously, you don't have a mayor right now, may not get one until November, but you do have a mayor pro tem who has all of the responsibilities and duties of the mayor in the meantime. And certainly, you could create a more inclusive process without necessarily going through a very formal process that is going to cost, I would say at a minimum $18,000, and if you want to open it up to other potential recruiters, then you're talking about potentially a solicitation process that you would also have to go through. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot involved, and something that has occurred to me and this is no criticism of the council, but with the newness of the council, I think you all are still learning that Pine Lake is learning to crawl, essentially, to be expected from a new form of government, undeveloped systems, and things that we simply haven't experienced in the past. As you think about any precedent that you set for how you're going to recruit your city manager, that may be different from the first time, keep in mind that at any given time, you could be in the market for the positions that report to you, a city attorney, a city clerk, and it just so happens that in that fall of 2024, following the retreat, it wasn't just the city manager position that was vacant, but the city clerk position was vacant, and then the city attorney's position was to be vacant as well. And so there is something to be said that the former mayor was able to pull it off and make recommendations on 3 positions in a matter of a few weeks, which I would say city attorney and city clerk, we ended up with some pretty great candidates and incumbents elected. City clerk was a little bit different, as the council chose to put that off, recognizing that it potentially had an internal candidate, but wanted to give some time for the assessment of that position by your new city manager, and ultimately we ended up with Mr. Dykenhart after he served for acting. So efficiency of the pass, in order to get to more inclusive, it could come with a pretty high price tag, a lot more time, and certainly a very complex process. And then it all comes down to how good will your field be. And I know that there have been issues of what Pine Lake is willing to pay. If you take the city manager as example, you do have a pay range now that starts at around $110,000. It goes to $130,000 as you go out and recruit for external candidates. Do not expect that they're going to be willing to take something under the minimum of the market of Pine Lake. And if you find good quality candidates, they're going to have experience, and it is very unlikely that you're going to be able to get them to come, even if you go through a full process at the minimum of the pay range. They will expect to be probably at midpoint or higher based on their experience and time in the position. So a lot for you to consider, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage for your discussion.
Thank you. Questions from council?
I have kind of a logistical question, please, City Manager Hawthorne. Some of the stuff from Center about the interview day and kind of meeting with leadership or council, how does that work with open meetings? Like, are we going to have, like, yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, I'll give that one to Chris.
Okay, yeah, whoever wants to answer.
As long as there's not a quorum of you meeting with a candidate at any one time, you can have individual interviews with whomever you're talking about. You are authorized to have executive session interviews with the final candidate. If you narrow it down to one person, you can bring that person in for an interview with all 5, or maybe by that time 6 of you. So there's different levels and different places where the Open Meetings Act will apply.
Okay.
Generally speaking, conversations about choices would be privileged and excluded from the Open Meetings Act, so it would be available for executive session, but not always having the opportunity to interview everyone in executive session with all members present. So it's going to be a case-by-case process to determine where we are in your choices and how you want to proceed with this search as to what discussions and what places we are in the process and what the act says we can do.
Okay. Yeah, on I don't know what page it is in the whole packet, but it's page 12 of Sumter's packet. And it talks about the interview day. And one of the things it mentions is the mayor and council spend 75 to 90 minutes interviewing each candidate. And so I didn't know if that meant like a bunch of back-to-back coffees, so we're not violating open meetings, or if there's something we have to do more publicly.
Yeah, I don't know Mr. Hutmacher personally, but yeah, we'd have to square that with the Open Meetings Act and what would be allowed under those circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Lowers, do you have any questions or comments?
Just interested in allowing our residents also to have an opportunity to meet perhaps more than the single finalist, but maybe several.
That's not ordinarily done, Councilmember Lowers. The process of selection, because of the sensitivity of the possible prior employment of the candidates, having a public meeting or a public forum in which the candidate is presented or allowed to be interviewed by the public may be detrimental to that candidate's existing employment in case they're not selected. So typically, that is not an opportunity that exists.
Just to comment on that, there are some organizations that build it in, but as the city attorney says, it's very public, and you can probably count on candidates backing out of the process for the very reason that he that he describes. They don't want to be in a situation where they're so publicly exposed, even as they may have positions that they currently hold. But it is provided for in some proposals.
I would like to
Thanks
see.
for that explanation.
I'm sorry, Jane.
Anything else, Jane?
I would like to see part of the process, a survey of residents of what they would like to see in a city manager. Remember from the town hall, a lot of people had thoughts about how they should be included in the process, and I think since they're paying the bills.
Well, with respect, Councilmember Torrent, that might be completely inappropriate. What John Q. Citizen thinks is necessary in a city manager may not be what the city actually needs. And to step away from representative democracy to participatory democracy in the selection of the chief executive, I think would jeopardize the process in ways that I can't even begin to imagine at this point. I understand that Pine Lake has a history of more direct participation in governance maybe than a lot of cities, but if we're going to grow out of the strong mayor form of government that was done away with 2 years ago and into the council manager form of government, then we need to grow into understanding the role of representational democracy and a Republican form of government that allows for elected representatives to make the hard choices. Y'all are certainly able to take the temperature of your constituents about what they think you need to consider, but those choices need to be yours rather than a participation process for the citizens to weigh in on those situations. The risks of creating an atmosphere where there is potential liability for candidates who are not selected because of that process is enormous. I cannot possibly understate how risky that can be because of what somebody may come in and say that they absolutely do not want or absolutely do want in a candidate, and then someone is selected or not selected who is different than whatever that statement was. I have personally represented cities where that has happened, and there have been lawsuits that have been settled for hundreds of thousands of dollars over those claims. So I cannot understate the risk that that proposal and that suggestion makes.
I was thinking more of a community chat, or just, like you said, taking the temperature of what people wanted.
If you make it formal, you run the risk of creating an atmosphere where the statements that are made in the public forum become a perceived policy choice for the people participating in the public forum. So if you create a record that says we are taking this information and we're going to evaluate what we want based on this information, then you're creating an atmosphere by which we have to defend every statement of every person who comes before that body and provides that whatever they want to say about what the city manager ought to be or ought not to be. So if you do that privately, that's your political business. That's not my place to say you should or shouldn't do that. You create a public forum when that's done, that becomes my business because of what I have to defend as your lawyer in defending the choices that you then make on who the candidates are or are not. Does that help?
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that formal or that involved, just what people thought before we even had candidates, just in an ideal setting, what is important to them.
If I misunderstood your intent, I apologize, but the language you were using sounded like you were talking about public fora where people will be able to make comments or statements about what they thought, or even solicit responses to a survey about what they want or don't want, because then the survey becomes an exhibit at trial for that discrimination claim. So anything that you do that even smells like a process that is sanctioned by the city creates a risk of liability and a risk of discriminatory lawsuits coming up from anybody who's not selected.
Okay, thank you for that guidance.
And what will happen with the recruiter, and I've read through Warren's proposal, but it's pretty typical among recruiters, and it is recruiters who work with city manager council forms of government, they do look for the individual council members to be that representative group of the community. They will come in and probably call you or sit down with each of you and look for what it is that you're looking for. To the extent that, you know, in a community chat, you've talked with members of the community and you want to share some of those things, but it is very unlikely that a recruiter would want to meet directly with the public in preparing for the process.
Yeah, that wasn't my suggestion.
Yeah, I clarified now.
Thank you.
And I think it was laid out as part of the process that
Yes.
each council person member would have a conversation with Warren, and I'll just throw out really quickly, Brent Walker, who used to be a city council member and a neighbor of mine, knows Warren very well. He works for the city of Sandy Springs currently, and spoke highly of Warren. He worked underneath Warren for numerous years in the city of Dunwoody, where Warren was the city manager at that time, but it was for a private firm that was hired by City of Dunwoody when they first incorporated. And he has a long-standing personal relationship with Warren and couldn't say enough good things about him. And Brent lived here for many years and was a city council member as well.
Yeah, and one of the next steps, I did have this conversation with the mayor pro tem, and we both thought that it would be better just to have more of an open discussion, but without making a commitment to any recruiter for your next discussion. You just may want to bring in Warren and have a discussion with him before you decide on your next steps.
And to do that, would that be in a council meeting, a work session, an
Yeah.
executive session? How
Yep.
would that?
Mayor Hall had contemplated that he would have actually come to this work session meeting because she'd had a chance to already meet with him. Didn't have the proposals yet, but that was the plan for the April work session. It could certainly be planned for the May work session if you wanted to move it up. Of course, we'd have to coordinate with his schedule. You're not precluded from having presentations at the regular meeting also.
Thank you.
So I just have a couple questions. The 56 days that you mentioned, is that an average for Sumter to find a city manager? Because
The way that I interpret it is based on what he can deliver on his end without necessarily taking into account, you know, your schedules and when you may be available. And he might very well be able to deliver, but I just know it's very aggressive.
okay, and
And then some of that, I think, would also depend on what other positions are open in the area that we are competing with. So there's a lot of outside forces, I would presume.
That's
Just
right.
it's-
It could be that he puts out an ad, and let's say that it's for 30 days, 20 days, but 30 days is certainly typical. You may have very few candidates or not a sufficient pool of qualified candidates that meet the criteria that you've set forth. So the process is going to be fluid. So don't think that, you know, 2 months is it. That is ideal.
the other question I had was, typically, I mean, it seems like typically cities will hire consultants or recruiters to fill these executive positions. Are there any other avenues that are open to Pine Lake?
Yeah, there are multiple avenues. Some cities will, and this goes back to the community discussion indirectly, but some councils will select, say, a select committee or a citizen committee that basically takes on the responsibilities of screening the applications, maybe even interviewing candidates, and then making a decision or making a recommendation up to the council. The previous process, as I think Ned was recounting to me, but this was more for the interim city manager. There was some outreach to the Georgia Municipal Association, and they made some recommendation on retirees that were available for interim. So interim is a bit different from the permanent city manager position, but I think interim does have to be a consideration, because if the recruitment, whether it's from 56 days up to 6 months, and go back and remember my words, if it takes you 6 months, do not be surprised. That is a good, efficient selection process, the way that these things go. So you will have to make a determination of who you want to fill in during that period of recruitment.
And so we do have a proposal as well from Sumter for an interim. And one of the things I found interesting on the very last line of that is that if the client hires the interim professional as a city employee within 45 days of initiating work related to this agreement, that there's a finder's fee of $2,500, which would be, that may or may not negate the search of the $18,000 for the actual search.
Yeah.
We have no idea. That may be in addition to the $18,000
Right.
for the search.
I-
But then GMA is also a source for potential interim.
Yeah, I was surprised at the proposal from Sumter on this one. I wasn't expecting, well, you start with a firm such as Sumter. They've got their pulse on candidates from across the country who are available, so they start with a pretty wealthy pool. I was expecting that maybe there would be some fee in bringing somebody on board. I wasn't expecting a proposal that says that basically you would be hiring an employee from Sumter. And so that's a pretty hefty cost, on a monthly basis, $18,000. If you take my salary, you're paying $10,000 per month. So if you found somebody even at the top of the range in an interim capacity, then you're talking about almost an additional $8,000 a month that Sumter is getting. So I wasn't particularly impressed with this particular type of arrangement, and if it was possible to use GMA to help, similar to the last time, then certainly that's a preferred way. I do know that with the previous interim city manager, however, Billy Beckett came about, his time commitment was very limited, and I think that was more of the pressure that was on the mayor. He had basically let the city know that he couldn't work any longer than the end of December. So what might have appeared to be a non-inclusive process was perhaps the pressures that the mayor was feeling to get the position filled before then having to go out and find another interim city manager.
So we're not making any action on this tonight. We're not starting any processes. We're just
No, it's open
Correct.
discussion, and then it would be helpful for you all to discuss what you want your next steps to be. From my perspective, there's nothing imminent on my part in leaving. So my commitment is what I started out with. I'm certainly in the market, but there is nothing on the horizon for me at this point. So I'm here with you for a while. So you've got some time.
So next steps are to just talk amongst ourselves, talk with you,
Yeah, and I think, since you do have a proposal, and he went to some trouble to put it together, anticipating that he would be invited to this session, if it's even worth you're having a discussion, because I would like to be able to tell him, you know, if the council is interested in talking to you, and I think he does have a 90-day limit on
I saw
these
that.
proposals.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions, please. First, thank you, city attorney and city manager, for like clarifying some of that part about the search and the conversations about it, because I have no prior experience. So it's really great to get that so early so that I don't go out and make some really poor choices. I have a question about the fees. So on page 2 of Sumter's packet, it says $18,000 a month. And then I just lost my place, but on page 16, it also has fee proposal for services $18,000. And I'm confused, are those the same?
No, it's two different
Okay.
proposals. He gave one for the interim city manager where it would be $18,000 a month for you to hire his employee that he finds and that works for Sumter.
Got it.
And then for the actual recruitment of the permanent city manager is a flat 18,000 plus whatever. Usually there may be a cost for moving or expenses.
Right.
So in
So there-
essence, sorry, the 18,000
So there's a
month.
flat rate for the recruitment
Yes.
plus expenses, and then there's a monthly rate for an interim if we hire an interim
Right.
through him.
Right through Sumter.
And is it possible to do the recruitment without the interim? Or is it we have to take everything if we take
No,
his proposal?
yeah, they're separate.
Okay,
They're separate
Great.
proposals.
I thought so, but I really want to
Yes.
make sure I'm understanding. Thank
And,
you.
and so the interim would be similar to a relationship that we have with Stephen, if I understand that correctly. Stephen is a employee of Sumter,
Right.
but is working with us as a partner.
Well, no, I would describe Stephen, yes, is an employee. So yes, the same except that he's permanent.
Except different.
Right.
Same except different.
Yeah. Stephen is here to stay. He's not interim.
He's not interim, right?
You hear that, Stephen, right?
Okay, so then our task is to follow up with him as far as what we're still considering or what we,
Yes, and I can certainly be the conduit, but I
Right.
think it will be important for you to at least determine tonight, not necessarily to hire, but if
Sure.
you want to have a conversation with the actual recruiter. I mean, I've given you my experience, but I'm not an executive recruiter.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Lowers, are you still awake?
I am. I'm in favor of having Sumter visit us at our next meeting at the end of April.
So in terms of process, is that something we would come to an agreement on and then see if that
Consensus.
is available, so consensus like
Consensus
we
of
would
the
do?
council.
And
I
this-
don't, the only caveat I would say is maybe set a couple of dates so that if he's not, because I know he's busy, but if he's not available on your regular meeting, that we could do it in the May work session or a special meeting, depending on his schedule if you wanted to.
Do we have a consensus of wanting to have a conversation and presentation with Mr. Sumter?
Yeah, I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also like to go to with GMA, not go with them, but talk to them about, like you said, for interim.
Yeah, we can do some follow-up on that for you, but it sounds like you may be more interested in talking to Mr. Hutmaker, Warren Hutmaker, president of Sumter, for the executive recruitment, and then looking at other alternatives for the interim, even though he can also address interim and advantages of going with his firm as well.
Sure.
Great. So then in terms of, would that be you contacting GMA? Would that
Yeah.
be?
Yes, I mean, we have a regular person, Michael McPherson, you met
Yep.
at the retreat, who's assigned to Pine Lake, so we can certainly get more information. I probably, if not me, me or Ned will reach out.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? We have a consensus then, and hopefully either in the next 2 meetings or 3 meetings, we will.
And I'll, I just wanted to add about the timing with Sumter that I'm open to a special event because I know that he sent this proposal. It's been several weeks, and I'm mindful. I would like to respect his period of us confirming. So just being mindful that our meetings are so spread out that if his schedule doesn't allow to, find a way to accommodate that
Yes.
period.
I will shoot for the April 28th meeting. If he has a conflict, then we'll come back with some optional dates between April 28th and the first meeting in May.
Great.
Thank you.
One last question. I'm also mindful of people's time. So if we decided to go with Sumter, I understand that timing isn't necessarily perfect. Would we just if we were to enter under contract with them, when does it go into effect as far as the process with you as well?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question because that's kind of the tricky part of this. Until you have a separation from your current city manager, it's kind of premature to certainly get an interim city manager. I think for the permanent position, there's enough legwork that needs to be done that you could time that accordingly. So if my last day is December 31st, but it could also be another date, because you and the city manager get to determine, my separation. And so assuming, however, December 31st, you could certainly enter into a contract that anticipates him coming and getting started well before that time.
I think the problem with that would be if there was an earlier separation, but we entered under contract to go with Sumter for finding us a permanent city manager and not an interim, and if you left earlier than December 31st, but we've already entered under a contract with, someone that's Sumter's found, and then we still have to kind of fill a gap.
Yes, and that's where the interim proposal came in, but then you still have the options of not necessarily using Sumter, and if we do some leg work with, say, GMA, even they can come in and talk to you of potential sources, and then it's a matter of just timing and kind of the contingency factor that also has to be factored in. One of the reasons that I made a determination to inform you as early as I did, and even with then later updating you that I'm not retiring, so I'm still in the market. I've been through this enough times, and the times that it has taken less than a year for me to move to, I don't know that I can give you one example of it. So there's always that possibility, but I'm not anticipating it. But if it happens, you will be the first to know, and I'm going to provide you a sufficient transition period regardless. And, that's whether, I'm here or not, whatever I can assist you in doing it. For me, that's just, it goes with the territory. I want Pine Lake to prosper and be successful following my departure.
And
So I'm not going to abandon the city by no stretch of the imagination.
well, we wouldn't expect anything but, because you're a professional. But I do thinking also it's not just about the process of the search, but also the handoff. and the
Yes.
transition, because that a lot of times is a challenge that isn't always handled greatly in my
Yes.
experience in my business. So that is certainly my hope, is that
Yes.
that would be part of that process.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So we appreciate that. I appreciate that. Other comments? All right. Item number 7, GERMA insurance renewal.
For this item, I anticipated, because, you know, insurance is complex. And I thought whether or not to invite the GERMA agency in here to present, but I at least want to take a shot and answer questions. I certainly can't get into some of the technical types of insurance, but for the process itself, for you to understand what GERMA represents, and this is provided for by Georgia statutes as we cite. But Georgia recognizing, you know, I don't know if you all realize this or not, but Georgia has far more counties to start than most states. Comparable size to Florida, twice the number of counties in Georgia than Florida, or Alabama for that matter. And then aside from the counties, all of the small towns and cities, oh my goodness, there's a lot. And that's where the Georgia Municipal Association has come in, and I think they're one of the better state associations for local governments that I've ever worked with. They really work with cities, particularly small cities. And GERMA is another example, because this does fall under the Georgia Municipal Association umbrella. And through this provision of the state government, for cities to kind of pool together, because, you know, the larger the insurance pool is, kind of the less risk that it is, and the more cost-effective a program can be. And so we take advantage of this group self-insurance for insurances that range, and these are typical for municipal government, that deal with general liability, motor vehicle liability, property damage, cyber insurance, and any of another number of combinations that's outlined in the detailed proposal. And this is the period of annual renewal where they make an assessment of all of their partners to examine the risk and to make a recommendation on what the rates are moving forward. I point out in the preliminary CAM, and this will be essentially the CAM that I will submit to you along with the city attorney's resolution for renewal for 2026-27. The period starts on May 1st, so May 1st, 2026 through April 30th, 2027. In the very last paragraph of the preliminary CAM, I provide for GERMA goes through and they determine everybody's rates. But then based on the prior experience, they're usually able to offer a renewal credit. And the renewal credit for Pine Lake this year is $5,031. So that's taken off the top of the invoice amount. Also based on our loss experience. They made a target projection through their governing body of what the rates of increase would be, and basically what they presented was somewhere in the range of 3 to 5%. Last year, the target was 8%. Our rate ended up being a 4% increase. This year, the good news is for all of our coverages, we've got literally maybe a $20 or $40 increase or $50 increase. So that's a 0% increase. So it's about as good as it gets, other than a reduction, which is rare to see For cyber coverage, excess cyber coverage, obviously dealing with our computer systems and exposure on the internet, it's literally the same rate as last year, also $1,560. And then I just share the total invoice cost with the discount is $44,684. Again, about a $50 increase. But we do have to make that payment by the time of the May 1st starting date for the renewal coverage. So this will literally be on your agenda for April 28th, but some nodding of approval after your questions that you're okay to proceed. We will probably move ahead with getting the invoice prepared for at least the first 25% of the coverage.
Thank you. Questions?
I have a quick question, please. Are these, it says 25% is due, so is this something that we pay quarterly?
Yeah, we have the option. We can pay it quarterly, or we can go ahead and pay it fully.
Okay.
But quarterly is what I would propose.
Okay. So this is an example of what Mr. Mayor was referencing earlier of how certain costs are not, I mean, quarterly is kind of spread evenly, but like isn't spread evenly monthly.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Is this like car insurance where you get a discount if you pay 100% upfront?
No.
Okay.
That option isn't available. They've given us kind of discount regardless. So all the more reason why pay it ahead of time.
Yeah, right.
Councilmember Lowers, any questions?
No, proceed.
So, you know, I like to see all of my options laid out before I make my decision, but this is what we've been using, and to my knowledge, is there, I can't think of any other insurance that is like this. Are there other entities that offer this?
We could certainly go out on the market, but my speculation would be that we wouldn't come anywhere close to kind of this pooled arrangement, as small as we are. Larger cities certainly, you know, may go out on their own.
Quick question under the cyber coverage. Knowing how costly ransomware can be if we get locked out of our system and the such. So I guess my concern is, are we protected enough, not just the insurance, but also in terms of our security, and knowing that that's constantly always changing and under threat.
Yeah, and this one, the 1,500 that I cited is for extra cyber coverage. So in the comprehensive, you know, there's some level of coverage as well.
Okay.
So this
So
is
that's above and
this
beyond.
is extra now, and I don't know that Mr. Dykenhart is aware of this or not, but we have a timeline of the end of this week, and I've asked him to work with our information technology vendor VC3, because we do have to fill out a pretty comprehensive application, even though we've already asked them to bind the coverage for what their proposal is. And so that will help in the assessment of kind of those what has become kind of common and typical, you know, whether it's ransomware, whatever else. But it will help in their assessment of what is sufficient for us.
Well, and I know we've just been in the process of starting to upgrade our technology in terms of we're getting fiber, I believe, a better price, and
Yes.
Was found or we were contacted, and you researched that, and they're installing fiber in all of our buildings now.
Yes,
So I think
exactly.
that's
Started today.
that is great to hear. Any other questions? So do we go to consensus? Is that the information you would need to?
Yeah, similar to what you just did with inviting
All
the.
bob heads in unison.
Yeah.
Except, so do I nod the phone? Jane, are you nodding your head?
Nodding away.
Okay, let's do that together.
Thank you.
All right. We are done with new business. Wow. Public comments. Come on up. Identify yourself. Talk into the mic.
My name is Brian Engel. I live at 4562 Orchid Drive. And the complexities of managing a city with so many different departments of public safety and public works and management of the management itself and the finances and all that kind of stuff. All of this is just so above my head. I just wanted to kind of make the point that I hope that in terms of recruiting an interim and a more permanent city manager, that all the options are considered, but most importantly, that the size of the city and the scope of services that we currently have kind of matches the right candidate, so that we don't have like Avondale size management when we don't need it, but obviously we need Pine Lake size management, and I couldn't even guess what the particulars of what that means, but it's just like it's got to fit and be appropriate. So that would be my comment. If I have a little bit of extra time, also just as sort of a challenge on the public input to city management style, what kind of city management, what do you think it does? What are you looking for and all that? I mean, there are anonymous forms. There are ways to submit information, I think, with a survey and taking the temperature, as was mentioned, or put in that way, to get ideas from residents and input that way. So I would hope that there's still an avenue where that kind of point of tension can be still kind of worked a little bit, so that we can feel like we're, involved as much as possible. And oh yay, you're not stopping me. Also, I'm hoping that there'll be an opportunity for submission, some kind of participation in the mural. I don't know what kind of organization you're thinking of right now as far as submissions or ideas, whether it be like, if that were a possibility, here's a template of the, what is it called? Holds back the, anyway, the cement. And what would you like to see there? Or draw something, draw a flower, draw a kingfisher or something like that. Submit it. And it may not necessarily be an expectation that anybody's submission would be, but it would be like under consideration. Just like making a Lake Fest logo kind of idea. And I think I'm out. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Any other public comment? Come on down.
Lord. Kathy DeNabraga, 4641 Ridge. So just a couple of comments. Thomas, thank you for bringing back to the attention of council the issue of the lake staying closed, being open for Lake Fest, which is earlier this year than it has been in many years past, and also about the bonfires. Really, we asked you to do that because people asked us to do it. We had many people say, well, why can't we swim? They're right on the lake making sand sculptures. So rather than have the volunteers say, no, you can't get in the lake, no, you can't get in the lake, nobody likes to do that. But I do think it would be a good idea, and we can help share the cost of doing the testing, which actually, Councilman Torrent, we probably should do if we're going to let people paddle on the water. We should have a current test. We do ask them to sign liability forms, which is mostly for injury, may not be for E. coli. I don't know. As regards to the permit, I think I might possibly have been the last person to get a permit for a fire. And I just want to say that I had to pay a deposit to make sure it was cleaned up. And we did that. We used a big fire pit. We had a system to clean it up. I couldn't just put it anywhere I wanted. I couldn't do just anything I wanted. It was very clearly spelled out. And the reason I bring it up is because I think that the citizens I feel that having access to some of our areas in moments of celebration is very important for our building of community. And I'm sorry, dancing around a fire at night, that clicks all the boxes. I think you can make a distinction as you continue to think about this between a private barbecue where people might be, you know, just grilling some ribs and drinking some beers, and more of a public open opportunity to enjoy the lake and the fire under controlled, reasonable adult supervision with proper permitting and advance notice and posting a pond. So just keep that in mind if you don't mind. I don't believe that we should be using herbicides on the lake, but I think it's a little disingenuous and a little performative for the city to say we're not going to use it, but it's okay for everybody on this side of the lake to use them, because it all ends up in the same place. So anyway, I just noticed this discontinuity of logic when it comes to the herbicides. And finally, I want to thank Stephanie Kohler for her comments about the mural. This is a great opportunity to build a community through a collaborative process, not driven by one artistic vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I see none, so thank you, public. Reports and other business. Stanley, I believe that is you. Welcome back.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So this is a continuation of a discussion that started last month. Obviously, a very important discussion. This council has before it, you know, despite your size, among the most difficult decisions that I've seen of a governing body, and your time frame isn't far off from having to make some of those early decisions. In fact, April will be a pretty busy meeting, a range of topics, but it will be, I believe, the introduction of the first of several steps that you will have to take regarding the upcoming tax digest process. No critical decisions, but at least starting to lay out the process where you will make a decision by the end of January on that ultimate question on the tax millage rate itself. And I do want to make sure that you understand something that I said before, and I know that there's some confusion on this, and this has to do with the county and most of its cities' fiscal year being a calendar year. But the tax millage that you set is not only applicable as you get ready for your fiscal year 2027 process, but it will adjust the level of revenue that you get in for your 2026 budget as well, and that applies to DeKalb County and other cities on the calendar fiscal year. The last time that you made an adjustment, or the city council made an adjustment, was 2024, going through the same process that you will be going through. Obviously, the adjustment in the valuation affects what we get. We have made calculations and factored that into the budgetary process. We don't know what that will be. Part of what I'm going to talk about and that I've shared with you in the strategic performance report is, I guess it's kind of a two-sided sword. But Pine Lake residents, owners, property owners, have had significant increases as we've studied over the last 10 years, but it hasn't been because of increases in the millage rate. If you go back 10 years ago, the millage rate is lower today than it was 10 years ago, and historically had been even higher. It has been the increase in the market value of properties. And while that has cost taxpayers more each year in paying their bills, barring, you know, whatever discounts that may come from different exemptions that they qualify, the rate of increase in the assessments of Pine Lake have been, the best word that I can think of is amazing, certainly significant. The positive side of that is, you know, a home that was valued at $80,000, which was about the rate of the assessed value 10 years ago of homes, has now risen to, you know, above 200,000 for that average parcel. And the number has been constant around 388 units that make up the property valuation of the city. And it has been, over the 10 years, roughly 145% increase. 1 year it was 30% alone, 30% increase. So on the one hand, higher tax bill, but then when you look at equity in homes, it's a sign that Pine Lake has done something right. The market only goes up because people are willing to come in and pay higher prices. And then just compared to unincorporated areas of DeKalb, not necessarily those immediately surrounding Pine Lake. I looked at across the county. There's simply no comparison with how values have increased in Pine Lake versus other areas. So yes, higher tax burden, but greater wealth in the equity of homes on average. But there are multiple options that we want to look at, and Ned is going to follow me similar to the last time. And are we on page one of the SPR? And I've gone through and just kind of highlighted, and I'm going to go through this quickly, hopefully, but I do want to make sure for those of us who have read at different paces, who may not have read, there are just certain basic things that we all need to be on the page of as we progressively move ahead with this process. And I chose this month to go with the same title, Pine Lake's Financial Sustainability, and then adding what I consider to be a more practical examination. What are the dollars and cents for key options that we discussed before, really focus on the opportunities and strengths of Pine Lake from the kind of abbreviated SWOT analysis. So this month's key question, as applied to the three options that I think are most viable, some more than others, in maintaining sustainability of the property tax, that probably the only option that you've got full control for, as difficult as those decisions may be. But then municipal annexation is one that is more longer term, that probably requires some immediate action if we're going to take it seriously, and certainly more shorter term than, say, hoping for more vitality from Rockbridge Road, commercial and industrial properties. And then the third, that you also have some control over, for the most part, control over, even though I think it would be something that would have to go to, I'm not sure if it has to go to the state legislature, but disincorporation is an option that we at least thought needed to be on the table, even as survey questions are being developed. So I want to start with the property tax and go through the other two options, and then I want to visit some of the questions that came out of Councilmember Lauer's email requests from a few weeks ago, because we are able to provide some of those answers based on historical data. If we go to page 2, and at the top of the page, I asked the question, what are the practical dollars and cents of property tax to residential property owners of Pine Lake over the last 10 years? And I decided to take Tax Digest information over the last 10 years and to put it into a table to see what I've already described for you. But if you look at the millage by the years 2016 to 2025, the millage for most of those years was actually reduced. And if you look at just from 2016 to 2025, we are almost a mill lower than where we were 2016, with the footnote that as recently as 2017 and 18, we were as high as 22 mills, over 22 mills, and historically before the 10 years, it's even over 23 mills. If you look at, you can kind of look at the average assessed value, which represents what of the market value is actually taxable, and that's 40% of the market value. So these numbers and changes are essentially the same. The average market value representing what a home on the market would cost, and these again are average based on the 388 units. The variation in that, I think one year was maybe 386, and now we're up to 388. And so if you look at 2016, an average property in Pine Lake was $108,000, and if you skip to 2025, based on those significant increases, as high as 30% as recently as 2023, if you look to the left, but then double digits in just multiple years in this 10-year history. So in unincorporated, the average has been around 4%, whereas in Pine Lake, the average over the 10 years has been 10% per year. And so that home that cost $108,000 in 2016 has more than doubled, getting close to having tripled in value. And again, double-sided absurd example that I gave. So if we go to page 3, Ned. So Pine Lake's 2026 budget used $191,000 to balance revenues and expenditures. If that kind of thing went on over multiple years, we would be in a situation of a structurally imbalanced budget. And you kind of get to determine how short of a period you want that to be. You can delay it and essentially exhaust much of your fund balance, which is unassigned, and we're around $605,000 as of the audit report for 2024. That number may be different for 2025, higher or lower, but we probably won't have those results until close to the end of the year, as Stephen updated you earlier this evening. There is a caveat that I want to make sure that you're aware. In our recurring budget, there is debt service that is approaching the end. There are two instruments that we have had over the last several years. The two of those together is around $111,000. So that takes the $191,000, so in a couple of years, starting in 2027, when the first will be paid off, already you're impacting positively your imbalance budget. But if we waited 2 years, you're still eating into your unassigned fund balance. Now, the last paragraph that I point out that I've highlighted, and this is what is going to be tough to bear, and I understand it, but it is simply the one item that you have the most control over, and you get to determine this question of structural imbalance. How soon do you want to shut that down in effect? And there is a direct tie, and I know that people have probably tired of me talking about the class and comp study, but that is the issue. That is the reason that we've got the level of imbalance that we had. And I say this very strongly because the right and fair decision was made to start to pay employees fairly. And the job is not done. Chief, sorry I've got to pick on you again. Your 20-year police chief is being paid the big adjustment at the minimum of the pay range. No 20-year competent employee should be at the minimum. So it doesn't end now with where they are. All the more that you've got to come to terms with how to fix this problem. But based on the current imbalance, a 3 mil increase that would put you in comparison to where it has been in the last 10 years, there is a cost to get this right. We're paying employees fairly, which that decision has already been made, but now having to pay for it on a recurring basis. And so the annual cost would be roughly $300, $319 as I have calculated. And that's based on 2025 assessed values. So putting ideals aside, and you know, it has been universal almost in every organization, and I don't care if the millage rate is 2 mills, 15 mills, or 30 mills. And I've worked in organizations where those numbers that I just cited to you all exist. When I was in Connecticut, 35 mills just for the city. In Fort Lauderdale, it was 2 mills. In Pine Lake, it happens to be in the middle of that. But whether 2 or 19 or 30, any notion of increasing gets a very strong reaction. So it has to come to the terms of what the actual situation is. And in Pine Lake, it's rather unique. A situation that was discovered, that was required by the charter, and in honoring the charter, which we have no other choice, we just got away with it because it was not known and not done. But now we know, and you can't hide from it. Charter requirement, this is what the study showed, scientifically validated. And I know the case has got to be made to the community. What I've heard from the community so far as we've had these discussions, and I've seen this in other places, communities want their employees to be paid fairly, but certainly need to be communicated with, and they need to understand it. And so this is the cost of doing something that went unaddressed for so many years, and the employees have borne the cost of it, as loyal and as dedicated as they are. I will make a recommendation. I'm not making a recommendation this evening, even though I've suggested it to you in this paragraph. And I will have fulfilled my professional responsibility. I will not be one that can be accused of having brought forth a structurally imbalanced budget. I knew that this day was going to come. I told new council members as well as the past council members, this upcoming year is going to be quite the challenge of difficult decisions. The day is here. Municipal annexation is another option, but I don't think it takes away, because if municipal annexation is approved in the next legislative session, there's still a process. Not only do Pine Lake residents have to be convinced, and I think probably vote, and if they don't have to vote, surrounding communities would have to vote. So it's something that we can pursue, but time is very short, and there's also a cost. And those are just the factual components. But what are the practical dollars and cents in 2026 for considering annexation by Pine Lake? On page 4, and I had this in the strategic reports, both of these case studies going back to February, and then again in March, and now again in April, because I knew these were a couple of examples of cities, for different reasons and circumstances, have gone through this exercise of municipal annexation. Avondale Estates, and Avondale Estates is probably largely perceived as a community that is thriving, and it has, I believe, a lot to do with annexation decisions that they made going back to 2016, where they used Carl Vinson Institute of Government to conduct the study. Carl Vinson Institute of Government happens to be the firm that we use for the class and pay study. Clarkston is the other, and Clarkston is, their mayor happens to be the president of the Georgia Municipal, or DeKalb Municipal Association, and so they're kind of spearheading the effort of collective cities coming together for a single legislative bill that could be considered by the state of Georgia for 2027. Clarkston is ahead of us. I've been following them. In October, they released a request for proposals. By December, they made an award of their annexation study and assigned it to this group, KB Advisory Group. A factual, which I think we can assume it will be a very comparable cost in this market. For the areas that they're looking at, the cost is $87,000. They are in the middle of the study now. They anticipate it being 20 weeks. That was having gotten started in December. We're already in April, and we haven't even begun a process. Now on page 4, and I think this is the question that we have to frame for our community and for ourselves. And I think we've got to be very honest from whatever perspective that we may be coming from. But Pine Lake is unique. And any annexation of any significant size or population gain will affect the uniqueness of this community. A community that has been harnessed and has thrived since its earliest beginnings. And if there's any question on that, for as unique as we may be, people want to be in Pine Lake. That's the reason that taxes are as high as they are, based on the market values. There's a positive story there. And any significant change could challenge Pine Lake's smallness, its closeness, its spirit, its politics, its artistry, and its very fabric. And that has so much to do with how small we are. So you can look at any area of any size, and I don't care how close they are, it will change Pine Lake. Are we really interested in that? And if we're not, there's a cost. Because what we've got and what it has taken to get there, and it certainly falls to the services that we provide and the employees that provide it, there's a cost. And that's the question that I think has already been framed. As I recall, I think it was through one of Councilmember Lauer's question that she's planning to use even as we look at the comprehensive plan. My thoughts, and it's just my sense, my guess, but an educated guess, I don't know that the community is willing to go there, but let's follow through with surveying and talking to the community in your community chats and other forums, and certainly in the public hearings that are going to be becoming open. Putting that open question very candidly out there, I think it will help your decision making. And then there are those more subjective things, and I chose to put this in a paragraph because I believe in being transparent. I think things are very different now than even 4 months ago. I was pretty optimistic about the possibilities of annexation, and I was looking at it largely from economies of scale. 750 people, and just using a city manager alone. A city manager has the capacity to manage for so many more people in a community that could make affording the salary of a market-based manager so much more affordable for the community. So on the one hand, it makes some sense. But where we are at this time is the recent implementation of the class and compensation study. That's what's driving the issue. Potential structural imbalance in the budget if tough decisions are deferred, the new form of government and the growing pains that would exist regardless, not coincidental, resignation of the long-tenured manager, the non-renewal of contract of the city manager. Staff morale is down. Community frustration over an infrastructure improvement project. A minimum tenured governance board. I've never worked with the governing board with so little tenure. And so we're in a dysfunctional state at this point. Not that we can't overcome it, but that's where we are. And so the prospects of annexation, I don't think now is the time. I don't think we could succeed in it with convincing anyone, including the legislative delegation. But it starts with the community. Is the community even interested? And if they are, then you've got tremendous challenge to to make it happen at this time. So in my last paragraph, it's as simple as saying, I do not recommend proceeding with annexation considerations at this time from the factual standpoints alone, the timing and the cost. We don't have the budget to afford 50, 60, or $100,000 study for something that may not be viable. And then disincorporation. I'll go through this one quickly. On page 6, question being, what are the dollar and cents implications of Pine Lake chose to disincorporate? So let's start with what the city is receiving from its residents now to support services. And again, this is the average cost of the 388 parcels at 19.4 mils. That translates to $2,064, a significant increase from 10 years ago, but not because of the millage rate increase, but because of the good thing of values having increased on properties. People are wealthier. They've got more equity in homes, assuming that you've been here a long time. Now, if the city gave up all of its services and just relied on the county, the actual savings wouldn't be $2,000 that I just cited, $2,064, would only be $1,445. Because in addition to the county's operations millage, they also charge for special services, some of which we pay now, such as for fire. We don't provide fire rescue, so there's a separate millage that's a part of our county taxes. But there is a cost, and it's currently at 5.965 as an example for police. So the net savings would not be $2,064, only $1,445. So that needs to be factored in. It goes back to the question of how proud is this community of being Pine Lake and everything that has gone into it. And again, it's my sense, I don't think this is a viable option. So I do not recommend this incorporation as a viable option, in part based on, I don't believe it's what Pine Lake wants, but you also would not be achieving the savings that it might appear to be for what we have. Now, there's a question of this 191,000, how can we examine our revenues and expenses to maybe amend the budget to get that reduced? And this needs to be another very realistic assessment. And on page 7, I'm not going to go through it, but Councilmember Lowers asked appropriate questions broken down into 3 parts. The first being the first quarter that Mr. Mayor earlier commented that we don't have that information at this time. And it's not only your disadvantage. I've been here for over a year. I don't get to see those reports. Haven't seen the first one because of the limitations of our system. Department directors don't get to see those numbers as well. So we're at a disadvantage. And I know that there's a tendency to think coming in, particularly for people who had corporate backgrounds, of why isn't this information, or why don't we have this, why don't we have metrics? We are not at the crawling stage yet. Only had this form of government since 2024. I've only been here a year, and I won't recite again some of the things that Mr. Mayor pointed out with our systems. But I did want to go through and look at historical data and to give some answers to the other parts of Councilmember Lauer's questions that I know she was asking on behalf of the other council. And hopefully we'll be back in a month with more updated information, particularly on the first quarter. One of the revenues that I know Councilmember Torrent has raised numerous times since I've been here, and Councilmember Lauer's used as an example in her question of impact fees. It's a viable revenue category, but it is not practical for Pine Lake. These are usually one-time fees that are based on development. We don't have the capacity, and we certainly don't have any trend for impact fees, and they would be one-time sources as well for very specific functions that are usually assigned to largely projects or things such as, as an area grows, new residents come in, developers charge those same prospective residents costs that goes into the city's coffers for those specific benefits for the community, addressing that larger population that usually comes in. So we're not there. That's not a viable option. So I wanted to make sure that we were all clear on that. I see, other than a comprehensive review of revenues that again isn't going to happen in time for your tax millage consideration, that yes, we do need to, we've got dozens of revenues. They all pale in comparison compared to the property tax. But we need to examine them. I think we're going to need some help. That probably will be a request for a proposal that I'd like to bring to the council at a later date, hopefully in time for the fiscal year 2027 budget, to see what can we squeeze out of potentially all of those other sources. May involve some increases in the rates, but that would be a very comprehensive breakdown so that you have those options before you, hopefully for the next budgeting cycle. For this year, property tax is the realistic option going forward for this year and for the future. From an expenditure perspective and potential, as Councilmember Lauer said, itemized options for trimming costs, I developed my first budget for Pine Lake only a few short months ago. It was a learning experience as I became intimately familiar with the dozens of line items and multifarious costs that constitute the operating budget. Page 9, Ned. Pine Lake's budget is small and without cushion or fluff. And to illustrate that, in looking at some of the historical variance, and this has just been a trend that we've been on for the last 2 years, and these are audited numbers. But looking at fiscal year 2023, taken directly from the data, there was no elasticity, there was no cushion, there was no, for the services that we provide, some expectation of reducing the cost. In that year, we exceeded the budget. 101% of the original budget was expended. For the most recent audited, we exceeded the original budget by 114%. And then I also break that down by the individual departments. As you can see from the breakdown, a lot of these costs were not because departments were over their budget. It was other unexpected things that I haven't been able to dive deep enough to know why debt service, as an example, in 2023 was 130% of the original budget. I don't understand that. We had capital outlay requirements that were almost twice the original budget. And then 2024 was similar, with debt service was 127% of the original budget. Don't expect that to happen this year or 2025, but again, I haven't dived deep enough to know exactly what made that up. So there have been no savings that were generated from those historical budgets. So then let's look at the current budget and what is it made up of. And this is at the bottom of page 9. Probably what is now approaching 60% of the budget is for personnel costs, what we call personal service line items. It includes regular and part-time employee salaries, overtime, and very little. And the police chief manages this well, because normally that's where overtime would arise with requirements for police officers for special events and so forth. They have literally no overtime. Employee benefits that are listed. So 55 to 60% of the budget relates to personal service costs. We have no vacancies, so we should not be expecting any savings, and we are minimally operated. And at any given time, at City Hall or the police department or the municipal annex, you've got just a skeletal crew being there to keep those doors open. So the next biggest item is contracted services, and we contract out quite a bit, including for some administrative support, office and administrative support. Some of our employees that you may think are full-time employees are actually contracted. Missy and Danita are examples of that. And their times have increased in the last year to accommodate opening the municipal service annex, for instance, giving support to public works and to the court operations, as well as other duties. Missy supports Ned in his many things, as well as being the executive assistant for the city manager and supporting the city council, and just a wealth of information that goes with her history. And then we contract out payroll services. We contract out finance administration, county collection fees. We have a city attorney, but that's contracted out. For the auditor, our municipal codification process, judicial fees with being required to administer a municipal court, information technology, engineering costs, cleaning the buildings, repairs and maintenance of equipment and vehicles, the liability insurance that we discussed earlier, claims and judgments, we do make such claims, communications, something that we had newly absorbed, travel and training, and then of course some miscellaneous other costs. All of those together make up 30% of the operating budget. And we did make some adjustments in those in 2026, reductions. I give a couple of examples. As we prepared the 2026 budget, what we had budgeted for financial services was $87,000. We were probably closer to 6 figures by the time we terminated that contract. We reduced that to a flat cost, bringing in Sumter to $60,000. We wanted to move ahead with a code compliance program after Chapter 16 was adopted of the nuisance abatements and such. In order to balance the budget, I recommended to reduce $50,000 from the budget. Legal expenses for what we require to run a professionally operated city. That's a cost, in my opinion, that's well earned. We made some improvements that Ned included in his strategic performance report. The website enhancement. We'll soon be getting to an agenda process that is far more efficient for you and easier for the public to follow. We had to provide for additional costs for a public defender, court interpreters, and some adjustments to planning and zoning. So I give those examples as a budget that is very tight, and I'm intimately familiar, and as I had to balance the budget to make a recommendation to the council, the fund balance originally was closer to $200,000 or $300,000. So I had to find, not fat, but it had to be reduced. I've talked about already the debt service. This is good news. 2027 will eliminate the 34,000, and by 2028, the additional 77,000. That will help, but we're 2 years away. So that concludes my presentation. No recommendations for you, just in process where I can't feel for you because you're the decision makers, but I understand just how difficult this will be, and particularly for a new council. And all of you are new in my mind, including the two senior ones. But I'm going to recommend, and you will decide. And that's all I've got. There are probably some other aspects of the strategic performance report that you should read closely. I know Mr. Kendrick, getting back to the tree plantings for the RIP-RAP, I told him that we probably need to let the process unfold a bit more with some of the surveying that's going on for you to get additional feedback. But Mr. Kendrick has a plan that he's ready to move ahead with, that he's previously discussed with you and outlined a bit more in his report this evening. I've already given you an update on Ned's, and I think most of the police chiefs was just good information for you to know what's going on. They're busy as ever.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. A lot of information to digest. And I would really agree, having lived in Pine Lake since 1996, that a conversation really about what is Pine Lake is long overdue. And the ramifications of whatever it is that conversation leads to. So, reports and other business. I'm going to start us off with, again, thanking the residents and thanking everyone who participated in the town hall, and specifically to our staff who were present, and Kathy D. for helping to facilitate that process. And then also writing up a report, which is included in the agenda packet. My question to start the conversation, I think, is what do we do next in terms of the conversations that we started at the town hall? And my sense was that there were some good conversations. There was a lot of engagement, a lot of questions, a lot of energy, and we need to move forward with building on that to continue the process. So one thing that we have some recommendations from Mr. Kendrick in regards to what's next for dealing with the riprap and that, and still continuing to gather public input and how we want to move forward with that. So I am really open to talking about what your all thoughts are of what we do next in terms of that process. So, throwing it out.
Well, I thought the town hall was very well attended, and I think that speaks to the fact that residents want to engage with us, want to talk to us. I think it would be good to be more accessible, answer these questions. That was the one sense of disappointment that I feel like I've heard, is that in the town hall, there weren't as many questions answered. I know we were limited by time, but you know, maybe next time, you know, go ahead and try to schedule another town hall and build off the momentum that we have going.
I agree. I also think that I don't know what Mr. Kendrick's suggestion for the rip-rap situation is. There's a little bit here. I didn't understand. Former Mayor Zaris had made a proposal or a suggestion or an offer of his help, and that was pushed back against. And I don't understand why we would not welcome that.
Let me clarify kind of what happened, I think, with that. One, Greg is a friend, and we meet when he's in town just to meet his friends, and we usually walk and talk. And we walked the wetlands and the dam, and as Greg is wont to do, he offered ideas. And I said, well, if you have ideas, write them down and send them to me. And that's what he did. And he wrote them up. And then I passed it on as just more information, really, for you, Mr. Kendrick, since he was the person who kind of helped develop the whole idea of that. I thought that would just, again, more data for us to look at and consider. No recommendations that we do it or not do it. It was just information. For me, I think I have some ideas of what I think I would like to do, but it's not just up to me. I would love to have another town hall where we actually do it as again, an experience that is interactive, where residents offer ideas to their vision of what this would look like. I know I've done workshops like that when I was facilitating programs for like Leadership Atlanta and Leadership Philadelphia, and the idea of what's your vision individually, then how do you create a collective vision? And I know, Kathy, we threw around just some general ideas, but I think next step should be knowing that we have a millage conversation looming. Timing is of the essence, and I would almost say I would love to have a town hall sooner than later to continue that process in some format, to have more involvement from residents, to give us some, again, more information. I know we're working on a survey that could be sent out as well. That will also, and I think the process with the ARC and their development of their plan may also come into play. So That's kind of where I would like to go, is another town hall sooner than later, where we can again continue the engagement process and continue gathering more input to what we want to be. And I think that feeds into the conversation of what is Pine Lake, and who we are.
Can I chime in on that?
Please do.
Hey, this is probably an apropos time to mention that Councilmember Kohler and I will be hosting a community chat on Sunday around the topic of, who and what is Pine Lake, in a non-binding, it's not a town hall kind of way, but in support of the ARC comprehensive planning process and the survey that's circulating right now, where people have a chance to weigh in on those values. Come talk to us on Sunday afternoon, and let's break down some of those elements of identity and what is community and what is a city and where do they overlap.
And what time and where will that be?
1 to
Well, now
3
you're
at the
pushing
beach
the
house.
limits of my jet lag.
Sorry.
1 to 3 at the beach house on Sunday.
Thank you. So 1 to 3 at the beach house. Please show up and offer your input to your council and the ARC. Thank you for chiming in, Councilmember Lowers. It must be past your bedtime by now.
So very much.
Any other comments?
I think I would just, agree with everything that's been said, but also just really reminding people that talking to council is a really great option, but fill out the survey, that there's more than one way to give feedback. And in terms of the ARC process, I think the point is to have data. And so when we're talking to the Atlanta Regional Commission, data is going to be the more valuable thing than, anecdotal commentary. So just really encourage people to show up in all the ways that you are able to, that it's not just town halls or public comments or whatever, that really, I think the ideal scenario is really having a diversity of opportunities. And then my only commentary to add to the town hall, because I think y'all have covered most of it for me, is that we did this really cool section of kind of identifying who works from home, who's retired, who's a grandparent or whatever. And we had in the group, no one self-identified as renters. And no one, I think one person came later who was a parent, but we did not have any parents. And I want to be sensitive to staff as far as, if your presence is needed at a town hall, I want to be sensitive to not encroaching on your personal time, but also see if there are options to explore. A weeknight is prime parenting, obligations, so far as I can tell. I'm not a parent. But just really wanting, again, trying to have this diversity of ways for people to participate.
Just to quickly mention, the survey that went out to fill out for the ARC, it did not go to my regular. I did get it, but it was in a promotions folder in my Gmail. It didn't go to my regular.
But it was in a
Pine Lake
news blast?
It was in a news blast, but
Huh.
not where it didn't go into my primary inbox. So
So we should send that out again.
maybe.
I'm up for it.
Yeah.
Thank
And-
you for
and-
letting us know. I didn't realize.
And I'd also remind folks, Ned, are you still looking for feedback on the website, the new website?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to share quickly about that,
I
please?
would love to. Yeah, please. You can just send me a direct email on the current website under front page news. There's a blurb about the new website, and it has a link, so you can go to sort of like a demo site at this point with some stock information and whatnot. So click around and let me know what you like, but more specifically what you might not like. or what you might like to see that you're not seeing, and so forth. I'll also plug that at the pollination celebration, ARC will be here, and they're preparing a very, I don't want to say too much about it, but a very quirky, fun, interactive situation for residents and visitors to engage with the process of building a comprehensive plan.
I'm shocked. Quirky and fun in Pine Lake? I don't know about that. Any other comments? I will throw out one thing. I met with the consulting arborist from the Georgia Forestry Commission who's been looking at our tree ordinance, which was something that we started looking at November. He has some, again, very positive input into what our ordinance is and the wording of it. He had a few little tweaks that are very minor that he's going to be sending to me soon. Some of them is just making sure we have some tables that were not part of, that didn't get put into Muni Code for some reason. So very positive about that, and he's going to start working hopefully in May on an invasive plant management plan, which will not include herbicides. Any other comments? Okay, then do we have anything for an executive session?
No, sir.
No. Do we have a motion?
Oh, I do have
Please.
a comment, sorry. I think of these things right at the, right at the end. Just for anybody, if you're watching this live or watching the recording, the strategic performance report is really great. And especially looking ahead to the community chat this weekend, it's not required, obviously, but I think in terms of thinking about identity, thinking about the future, it's got some really incredible resources. So I encourage you to check it out.
And thank you. The last thing I would say is I did have the opportunity to meet with all of our department heads in the last 2 weeks, and just in general, and I sent this out to your team, Stanley. Just one is just I like everybody. They're just really good people, and I heard a lot of commitment to their job, but also commitment to being here. But as always with a relationship with employees, we could always be better at acknowledging and thanking them. And one of the comments I know I've mentioned to Ned through time is I'd love to find a way to introduce our people to more residents. And one thought that I had last year was, do we do an article in the News Blast highlighting each employee? So I want to throw that back out into the hopper, because I don't think everyone knows everyone who does our work, just the ones they see. And so, for example, Stephanie Capers, very few people see, but she's just a very talented person. And one thing I loved in the conversation with Stephanie, she says, I don't get to see the council live, but I watch the recording. And I'm like, you do? How cool is that? And that just really made me feel really proud. And then also just, so reminder that we have not just very dedicated and concerned residents, we have the same about our employees and our staff. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good night, Leon.
Good night.
Good night, Jane.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Eat a croissant for us.